Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this talk here. Any Douglas Adams fans in the house here? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend seeing it. I'm going to go through a brief presentation of the have and have-nots of metal additive manufacturing. Some of the techniques can be used for polymer, but we're mainly focused on the metal side of things. So this is just a little snippet of the agenda today, what we're going to go through, the process, the ROI, some key variables, monitoring systems, and then we'll go through some case studies, and then we'll follow with the summary. So a little introduction. I'm Justin Joyner. I am the sales manager for the South U.S., Central and South America. And I've been in the rapid prototyping 3D printing industry for around 10 or so years. And the reason why I came to work for SLM is because the technology blows my mind every day. So as you think of what our company does, laser powder bed diffusion, that in itself, it just kills me every day. So SLM Solutions is a German-based laser powder bed fusion company based out of northern Germany. North American headquarters is in Wixom, Michigan, and we've been in business since about 1845, but we've been in the rapid prototyping 3D printing business since about 1970. So we've been in that area, and then laser powder bed fusion was actually developed by our Chief Information Officer, Dr. Dieter Schwarze, who's still on staff with us right now. So just a brief overview of all the technologies in additive manufacturing. We've got polymers, we have metals, we have powder bed fusion, direct energy deposition. But where we fit into this is right there. So we hold about 77% of the metal additive market is laser powder bed fusion. So just a shameless marketing plug for us. These are our machines. We have a small, a medium, and a large system. The mid-size and the larger machine can have anywhere from 1 to 2 lasers. The largest machine can have up to 4 lasers. And that all translates into how fast can you go, how big can you go. And so these are the materials, stock materials that we work with right out of the box. So these parameters come with the system itself. Depending on your needs, and if you have specific needs, we actually help you develop those materials, properties in-house. So it's not something that you have to pay extra for, but we actually give those to you as a service. So the things that SLM delivers as a company is more parts produced per dollar spent. Multi-laser technology, we're the pioneer in that industry. We're the first to market for those for the multi-laser technology. An open philosophy, so we're actually opening up the system. You can adjust every parameter within the system to get you the properties that you need. We also have the closed loop powder handling system, so at no point in time is the operator ever exposed to powder. So we have glove holes directly into the front of the system, so once you reach in, you can clean out your part, sweep it into the overflow bin, and then re-sieve that powder, all under a closed-loop argon-enriched atmosphere. So a little bit about the SLM process. If you're not familiar with how laser powder bed fusion works, I'm just going to go through just a couple of these videos right here. So what we're doing is we're taking the build plate, putting it into the platform. It's going to adjust and sink down. On the right-hand side, you can kind of see what the laser is doing at it's about a 2 millimeter spot on the plate itself. So as the laser melts the metal powder, slag and soot is being carried off of the build plate, and that's where gas flow with this process comes into play, is the gas is pushing all of that off the build plate. So once the part is melted, you don't have all that contamination settling back down on the plate itself. So that's where the purity of your part comes from. So just another brief overview of the process. We're laying down that fine bed of metal powder, usually between 20 and 50 microns. This is on a quad laser system. So each laser is going to melt that part And then we're going to take the sweeper arm and deposit another 20 to 50 micron thick layer of powder. So why are we here? So the ROI, we want to find out what's going to give us the best return on investment. Thinking about the parts that we're designing, thinking about the legacy parts that we're thinking about bringing into this technology. What's the best approach? So from our side, applications is going to drive everything. So you got to think first and foremost, what is the application? Is it a legacy part? Is it a part that you've made on a lathe for 20 years? That you're thinking about, hey, I've got a better idea of how to manufacture this part. Is it a new part? Is it extremely complex? The designs itself. Do we have conformal cooling channels? Do we have complex geometries? Do we have lattice structures built into the part itself? So if the application drives your materials, that's 50% of what makes up the entire process itself. A lot of metals that aren't offered today will be offered in the future. So we have the standard materials like we talked about before, the nickel, the aluminum, titanium, tool steel, stainless steel. Those are just the baseline materials today. You know, we're working on coppers, we're working on new aluminum alloys. So many different things. You know, some of the parts that we can't do just because we don't have enough energy deposited into the bed itself, like a zinc or a tungsten. Those materials are too hard. They produce too much off materials to make a good solid part. So like we talked about before, low quantity, complex geometry. On the new side, unique materials. ALSI 10MG, titanium 6-4, titanium 4. Copper. So GR Cop 84, which is what NASA uses on all of their shuttle parts. These are the types of things that we're looking at when we're talking about new materials within the additive parts that we're trying to bring to market. So what about existing parts? What are we trying to do different? A lot of times, if you've done it so much in the past, the old legacy parts, and you're trying to bring that and find the ROI, a lot of times it's not going to be there. Just because there's a lot of cost sunk into the process in the beginning, that sinking more time and more effort into that and expecting a big ROI, it's not going to come out the way that you think. So going into it with a design for additive mindset, it's different than traditional engineering, because you've got to think different. Do my holes need to be egg-shaped? Do they need to be diamond-shaped so that they can self-support themselves? So self-supporting structures, that's another thing. So part consolidation. How many parts do we want to take and try to make it into one piece? We want to get rid of bolts, nuts, weld beads, anything that we can do to consolidate into one piece to make it a one functioning part. Light weighting. We want to take all the weight that we can. We want it to be organic. We want to use lattice structures to strengthen the part, but take a lot of the weight out. So those are some of the things to consider when we talk about, you know, what part selections that we want to bring to market. So this is just a brief example of what GE has done. So they took their LEAP engine. It's not totally in production yet, but they redesigned 50% of this engine. Went through all the components, looked at how many parts that they can consolidate down to one piece. So they took 900 parts, consolidated it to 16 pieces. Now they've got a lighter weight structure. They've got a more fuel efficient engine because it weighs less. They use different materials, so they went from aluminum to titanium in a lot of these pieces, turbine blades, and within those turbine blades they brought in conformal cooling channels so that it can cool itself off as it's rotating with all that gas running through it. And they also replaced 10 to 15 of their suppliers. They kept that IP in-house. They're not sending out so much that they're losing a lot of their own personal data. So it's just a better idea to think about these applications when we're talking about how do we minimize or mitigate the supply chain itself. So some key process variables that we want to go over is materials are irrelevant if the quality isn't there. So it doesn't matter how good the material may be or how good it could be, if you don't have the correct processes in place for these parts, you're going to get issues like the graphic on the left shows. We've got porous holes through that part, mainly because maybe the powder had too much moisture in it. Maybe there was too much humidity in the environment. There's so many different variables that you've got to think about, but once your process is down and it's keyed in, you're able to create a repeatable process like the graphic on the right. So we want good weld lines, we want good adherence to the build plate itself, and once these properties come into play, it'll help you to determine if this is the best workflow for you. So a typical process that we see from a part side is we go through the design, we go through the job prep, we go through the part itself. We're looking at process controls. We're looking at powder removal after the fact. How are we going to stress relieve it? Are we going to put it into a hipping oven? Is there any inspection involved with these parts? Finish machining, bead blasting, wire EDM, and then final inspection. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and if you put in the time and the effort, then it's going to pay off in the future. It's not something that you can look at as a push-button operation. It's never going to be there, just because there's so many things going on. It's a chaotic environment. Once the laser hits the powder bed itself, if your processes aren't in place, it's going to turn out fairly wrong. So just another way to break down the processes here. This is what an engineer who's creating additive parts has to go through, has to think about. It's very confusing, but at the same time, these are all of the variables that you have to look at when you're thinking about metal additive parts. So how do we control it? How do we do the QC, the QA monitoring of this process? How do we know that we're getting good parts? One is process sensor monitoring directly inside of the machine. So we're monitoring every variable in the machine, the laser, the bed itself, the environment, the oxygen content, how much argon are we putting in there. We're also looking at each individual layer itself. So after each layer is laid down, we're taking a picture of that. And the photo on the right-hand side has green, red, and yellow boxes. So what the camera's looking for is they're looking for anomalies on the build plate itself. So if it's outside of the spec, it's going to give you a pop-up that says, hey, something's wrong. And so what do? Do you add another coat of powder? Do you stop the build? What happens? So these are the things that are smart enough to know when there's a problem on the build plate itself. Some other things to look at is laser power monitoring or melt pool monitoring. We're looking at the power, how much power is going into the powder bed itself at every, a quarter second? Every quarter second a measurement is taken and recorded. The same thing with the melt pool. Are we sure that the powder is being melted 100%? And how do we know that? After we get the CT scan back and we find pores somewhere, we can actually pinpoint the exact location, the exact time of what the machine was doing, and then the controls that were not in place or the variables that were out of sorts at that point. So I just wanted to go through just a couple of case studies. Some of the innovators in our time have adopted additive manufacturing, at least on the metal side. So who out there owns a Bugatti Chiron? Nobody? I don't either. So what they did is they took a complex part and they shaved 2 kilograms of weight off of this brake caliper. Took it from aluminum down to titanium. Took 26 parts and made it into one. It's got a higher tensile strength. It's got a lower weight. And if you look on the bottom, it says that the build time was 45 hours. That's for one brake caliper itself. So what happens if your processes aren't clearly defined and in place on hour 44 and this part fails? What do? You scrap it. That's a $30,000 mistake, because these brake calipers are $35,000 to $40,000 a piece. So if your processes aren't set and your workflow isn't top notch where it needs to be at, then you're going to have those issues. But they found a way to be successful, and it's also a repeatable process too. So this is an aerospace. It's called a gooseneck bracket. So the Kruger flap actuator is actually it goes on a 737. The trailing edge of the wing, where the slats open up at, that's where this actuator is located. So what we're doing is we're reducing weight, we're reducing drag and noise, but we're also creating a complex part design, organic, light weighting, different materials. So this was an aluminum part. We brought it into titanium. Titanium is very big in automotive and aerospace applications. So it's it almost looks like a duck. To me, it looks like a duck. But it's a pretty cool application for that. So speaking on the gear housing. So we've done the same thing here. We're looking for weight savings. We're looking for cost-effective ways to incorporate lattices inside of that engine itself. So where parts don't need to be completely solid metal, that we can take out that weight, but instead of putting supports in the inside to take out, we're using that lattice structure to help to support the interior of that part itself. We also have water jackets inside that part. We have conformal cooling vents. So we're trying to find ways to cool the part faster, reduce weight, and also different materials so that we have different strengths, different stresses, different tensile strengths. So is anybody familiar with relativity space? So this is a company based out of California. It's the first company to bring a 3D printed rocket to the market. It's actually in testing right now. So 100% 3D printed on our SLM 280. So taking a 100 times less parts for the rocket engine itself, whether that be nuts or bolts or fasteners, just all the different materials that you think that would go into a rocket engine, we're consolidating, making it into a two-piece structure. And then you've got the hose connections that go on with that. So topology optimized. So we're trying to make it the most cost-effective, time-efficient method for producing these engines. So I love this. So Albert Einstein says logic's going to get you from A to B, but imagination will get you everywhere. And that's fitting for metal additive, because you've got to have an imaginative mind when you're thinking about bringing these new products to market. How are we going to optimize these parts the best way possible? And that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for attending.